Singaporeans complain a lot. And that is one thing you hear over and over again. A lot of people, say Singaporeans would complain about literally everything. They would say that not a minute goes by without you hearing a Singaporean complaining. So Singaporeans complain a lot, but why are they complaining? They are complaining because they are not grateful, or because they think that their leaders are not doing enough. I really don't think the complaints Singaporeans make all the time has to do with ingratitude. That is what a lot of people think, that these complaints come as a result of ingratitude. But I don't really think so. I think most Singaporeans complain because they want improvement. The countries, Singapore is one of the greatest countries on earth. They have everything the average country would be envious of. So it's strange why the average Singaporean would have the tendency to complain. Yeah, but I really think that the reason they choose to complain, or the reason they complain very often, has a lot to do with the fact that they want improvement. Singaporeans would not settle for less when they know they can get more out of a given situation. So that, to me, is probably the number one reason Singaporeans, have this tendency to complain again and again. And I think it's working so far. Now, if you go to Singapore, you will be amazed, especially if you are coming from an underdeveloped country or a developing country. Now, even I believe if you are coming from, let's say, the United States or most parts of developed Europe, you'll be amazed. When you go there, for example, you get to experience things that you don't get. When you go to Europe, for example, I'm going to use Europe as a good example, because I have lived in Europe for a while, and I've been to Europe so I can, Singapore is a great place. It is one of the greatest places on earth. Yet the Singaporeans keep complaining. You might take it for ingratitude, but I really don't think they are ungrateful to the hard work their leaders put into making sure that Singapore is one of the best countries in the world. I think they complain mainly because they want to see more improvements. They want to keep their leaders on their toes. They want their leaders sitting up so that they could, do better. And I think that is, I think subconsciously the number one reason why most, or the average Singaporean, would complain, and complain, despite being in one of the greatest countries on earth. That being said, but let's go back to underdeveloped places like most parts of Africa. I come from Ghana, and it is it's a developing nation, with so much challenges. We face a whole lot of challenges, from all angles. But the funny thing is that, or the most ironic thing about the situation is that most Africans do not complain. Yeah, the average African is not going to complain about anything that his or her leader does. We just sit down there and maybe we see it as normal. We see the mismanagement of the economy or the mismanagement of our affairs as a normal thing. And we are okay with it. We are okay with incompetent leadership, bad leadership, corruption. We are okay with all these things. So we don't complain. Yeah. He who is okay with something is obviously not going to complain because they see nothing wrong with it. So this gives the fact that we do not complain about important things. It gives our leaders the idea that they can take the ordinary citizens for granted, and therefore they mistreat them. They embezzle money. Money is meant for the development of the society, of the country, of the nation, is misused. And the people don't complain. We are okay with it. We see nothing wrong with it. And the funny thing is that sometimes you, the one complaining, about corruption in government, you, the ordinary person who is not a beneficiary of the corruption. Now, when you complain, people have a problem with you. They feel like, you are talking too much. But there's nothing wrong with what the leaders are doing. So you become the bad guy for complaining or for trying to make sure that the government or your leaders are competent, are honest, are doing the right thing. People would have a problem with you. So we have that culture of do not complain, do not speak up about anything wrong in your society. But now let's go to Singapore. Singaporeans would not tolerate that. They would stick up. They wouldn't tolerate incompetent government or incompetent leadership. I think it's a cultural thing. I think they were brought up to aspire for the best. So you go to Singapore and you see a lot of hardworking people. Everybody wants to be the best version of themselves. And they also expect the same from their leaders. So essentially, they are not going to tolerate an incompetent leader. And that is the reason, I believe that's the reason why the country keeps moving forward. It keeps progressing. And so if you ask me, do Singaporeans feel ungrateful for all the achievements that they have made so far? I would say I really don't think they are ungrateful. I really think that the average Singaporean wants, improvements upon improvements. They would not settle for less. They would not tolerate bad leadership, and hence they complain. The complaint, I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it as something that they do to keep reminding their government or their leaders that, hey, look, we've got our eyes on you. So you need to keep making sure that you are doing the best that you can for our good as a society or as a people. And the complaints really work. So you go to Singapore right now and you see how incredibly advanced the country is. It's remarkable. Just think of it this way. Singapore is the only properly developed country in the whole of Southeast Asia. One thing that amazes me or that impressed me, aside the obvious things like, a very safe place, clean streets. These are obvious, amazing things that you get to see when you go to Singapore, or you get to experience. But one thing I noticed was the sheltered walkways, the sheltered pedestrian walkways. It's amazing, the government or the leaders, goes out of their way to design sheltered walkways. What this means is that, no matter how heavy it is raining or how scorching the sun is, you can walk and walk and walk and walk and not feel the harmful effects of the rain or the sun. You are basically protected. It's amazing. I was so surprised. I'd never seen stuff like that. Like, you could walk for miles and miles and not get affected negatively by the weather. That is amazing. To me, that was really amazing. Such little, almost irrelevant thing the government, or the leaders have taken care of. Come to, most parts of Africa, and what the governments or our leaders do is that they actually go out of their way. Our leaders go out of their way to cause harm to the citizens. But it's the opposite in Singapore. I see the leaders going out of their way to make sure that the average citizen lives a good life. That is amazing. That is something you don't see in most parts of the world. It's certainly something you wouldn't see where I come from. My leaders wouldn't do that. And they have a track record of not doing that. They've been always going out of their way to make sure that ordinary people like me suffer, So Singaporeans complain, yeah. And I think it is a good thing. And I think the complaints are the reason why Singapore keeps moving from one level to another, keeps advancing, keeps growing, keeps becoming better. So a society, all in all, a society whose, ordinary people decide not to complain, decide not to speak up, decide not to draw their leaders' attention to the ills of the society, have no future. That is my personal opinion. And I see that in Singapore and in most parts of Africa. Africans, we do not complain, about the things our governments do. Therefore, we suffer. Now, Singaporeans complain a lot. And they reap the benefits of that constant complaint.